Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first edition of It's Hard But It's Fair. I'm your host, Arshawn. Well, first topic jumped right out at me. It is concerning the the pending stand your ground law in the state of Arkansas. And Senator Stephanie Flowers had a very passionate opinion about this law. And before I start talking about pros and cons and posing questions, let's hear a little bit about Stephanie's opinions on this particular pending law.
And it doesn't take much to look on the local news every night and see how many black kids, black boys, black men are being killed with these stand your ground defenses that these people raise. Then they get off. So I take issue with that. I'm the only person here of color, okay? I am a mother, too. And I have a son. And I care as much for my son as y'all care for y'all's. But my son doesn't walk the same path as yours does. So this debate deserves more time. I'm in Pine Bluff. We have killings regularly down there. That for a long time since I've been back here in Arkansas, I have feared for my son's life. Now he's 27, he's out of Arkansas. And I thank God he is. When you're bringing up crap like this, it offends me. And then to limit the debate too, this is crazy. You don't have to worry about your children, Will. I worry about my son. And I worry about other little black boys and girls. And people coming into my neighborhood, into my city, saying they got open carry rights, walking down in front of my doggone office in front of the courthouse. That's a bully. Do I have a right to stand my ground with some crazy ass person walking around with a doggone gun? I don't know what the hell he intends to do. But I know I am scared. I feel threatened. Just like some of y'all walking around here up in the legislature with these damn guns. That, what's his name? Garner came in here, walking around here with a damn gun under his coat. You can see the damn print.
Senator, you need to stop.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't. What the hell are you gonna do? Shoot me? Senator shit. What the hell? I'm telling you, this deserves more attention. You want to come up here with all these little NRA bills and bills that Alec have and all that stuff. I'm talking about my son's life.
All right, that's just a little excerpt from the discussion that they were having at the legislature, and as you can hear, Ms. Flowers had some concerns, as do most people in the state of Arkansas when it comes to the stand your ground law. Personally, I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma has had the stand your ground law for quite some time. So I have firsthand experience with the dynamics that a law like stand your ground brings to a community and to a state as a whole. Now, being a person of some level of intelligence, I understand that there are pros and that there are cons to a law like stand your ground. And let's talk about some of the pros. Well, when you talk about stand your ground, you're talking about a person who can defend themselves with lethal force and be well within their rights to do so if a person is threatening their life, assaulting them, breaking into their home, so on and so forth. Now, the pros to that is this can give citizens the right to defend themselves in any of these situations with lethal force. Another pro is it could reduce the number of wrongfully accused homeowners who have or who may end up killing an intruder. It can also decrease the number of home invasions and physical assaults because now people, criminals, will have maybe it'll give them a little pause before they decide to commit one of these heinous acts, because knowing that the person in this house that I may burglarize could kill me, and not only could he kill me, but he could kill me and be well within the ramifications of the law. So these are some of the pros that could give a level of security to our older citizens. That could give a level of security to our single parents. That's as far as I think I can go with the pros in this situation. Now, some of the cons, the way I see it, it's going to give license to people to take life. And as long as it can appear to be self-defense, then this, for lack of a better phrase, is a righteous kill. It could give like vindictive people, say for instance, a man and a woman who have an argument, not of the physical variety, but I felt threatened and I killed my wife or my husband. And there are people in other states who, in the court of public opinion, they were guilty. But in the court of law, based on the stand your ground law, they were found innocent. So with any law, we all know people with means have the ability to slip through the cracks when it comes to laws, find loopholes. And this law, one of the cons with it is when we talk about a loophole, at the end of that, if someone slips through this crack, someone's life was taken unjustly. That is something that can't be fixed with money. That is something that can't be fixed with legislation. That is permanent. There are no do-overs in the game of life in this capacity. So when you leave it to any average Joe to be judge, jury, and executioner in a situation, it really opens the doors and the floodgates for a bunch of undue murders. But based on the law, they can be seen as righteous. To divulge, I do know people personally who have gotten off of murder cases based on this law in other states. I do know people personally who were gang members and drug dealers who got off because the person who came to rob their drugs or the person who they had a drug feud with advanced on them and they killed them. Based on the stand your ground law, regardless of the elements involved, it could have been drugs and it could have been some other illegal activity that motivated this person to advance on this other individual in a threatening manner. But the way that the law is written, it was self-defense. So I have questions. I have serious questions. Will the stand your ground law put society in a mindset of the Old West? Respect is a very different thing when you know that if I get down wrong with somebody, they can take my life. Just looking at old Westerns and stuff like that, I've always been fascinated with that lifestyle, the way it's been depicted in this country. And I've seen, scenes in Westerns where a guy, shot a guy down and, the sheriff comes up and is like, hey, what happened? He said, the man called me a liar. And it was like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like the gun in its inception, if we really look at it, is the coward's weapon. It's the great equalizer. That is what happens with a gun. You don't have to be big. You don't have to be strong. You don't have to be powerful. You don't have to have any type of physical prowess. All you have to do is be able to apply 3 pounds of pressure to a trigger mechanism, and you have the power to take someone's life. Now, when we look at the Old West, I mean, I think things were a little bit differently. Everyone had a gun on their hip. At any given time, it could be a life or death situation. So, will we as a society move back into that mindset to where I can take a life as long as it appeared to be self-defense? I have questions. Will the stand your ground law be limited to citizen on citizen situations? Let me go deeper on that. Scenario: an overzealous off-duty police officer assaults me. Do I have license to stand my ground against this person who is off duty, whether I have knowledge of him being a police officer or not? If a police officer is in the wrong, does a citizen have the right under the stand your ground law to act with lethal force with impunity? These are things that we need to think about, people. Can I stand my ground against a cop who's acting outside the ramifications of the law, i.e., an unjust traffic stop that turns physical? Will I have that? Are we going to put that type of responsibility into the hands of everyday citizens? Now, we'll go ahead and address the elephant in the room. If you have two eyes and you're looking at your screen right now, you can definitely tell that I'm a black man. So this is a concern for me and probably many other black men, as well as Miss Senator Stephanie Flowers. So now, when I get into a verbal altercation in the checkout stand at Walmart because I was cut off by an older white man. I say that because that's happened to me before. And I express my opinion about what he's doing. He uses some type of foul language. I use foul language back, but he has a gun. And he kills me. Well, I did raise my voice. I was using harsh language. Is that a righteous kill, even though he was in the wrong? These are situations and scenarios that can very well happen. We've seen this happen in other states. The man came to defend his wife. I think that was in Florida. The man came to defend his wife, and he pushed the guy down. The guy pulled his gun out, and he shot the man and killed him right there. Regardless to the fact that he accosted this woman, that man pushed him. So he gets off because he stood his ground. Even though that in the court of public opinion, he was wrong for the way he was treating this woman, this man's wife. What man isn't going to defend his wife? But because the man that I defended my wife against has a gun, he can kill me. Is that okay? That's the question that we really have to ask ourselves. Is this going to be okay? Are we going to be okay with Joe Blow citizen being able to take a life because he felt threatened? Because a minor altercation just got escalated because this guy has a gun. What are our interactions going to be like when heated arguments happen? What are those interactions going to look like when regular people have guns and they have license to use them? So my question is, what is the temperature of the state going to be like? There are people who will argue, Arshawn, I think that race relations are greater than they've ever been in the history of this country. But I beg to differ. I think that people see black people in positions in jobs and black people in society doing exponentially better than we did in maybe the 60s. Okay. But does that change the fact that we still have some prejudice and racial views in this country? Let's talk about stereotypes. People, whether they want to admit it or not, live through stereotypes. We look at people through stereotypes. The difference when it comes to African Americans is that the stereotypes, the negative connotation attached to African Americans is what? Loud, violent, lazy, welfare, doesn't take care of their kids. These are some of the stereotypes attached to African Americans in this country. What are the stereotypes that are attached to other racial groups that they get to live through? White people. A lot of black people make jokes about white people's credit scores and everything like that. White people have good credit. White people are, overly nice. White people are, kind. We have a lot of positive stereotypes about white people. Let's look at negative stereotypes. White people can't dance. White people, don't season their food. These are negative stereotypes that aren't all that bad. Let's look at Asians. They're smart. They're tech savvy. They're docile. Let's look at Hispanics. Oh, they're hardworking. They're unified. They'll live 2 or 3 families in a house, and they'll struggle together and come up together, and they get to live through that stereotype. So when you see, and I'm basing this off of the workplace. If you're in the workplace and you see a group of black guys standing at the water cooler, it's cause for concern. What are they doing over there? Why aren't they working? If you see a group of Hispanics standing at the water cooler, you think, oh, they must be getting a drink because they worked so hard. They've been working so hard. If you see a group of white guys at the water cooler, you don't even question it. He's got to be the supervisor. He's got to be doing something. So when we look at these stereotypes and then we apply them to the stand your ground law, law-abiding black man who kills someone in self-defense, there's always a question raised. White guy kills somebody in self-defense, it is what it is. It had to be a righteous kill. Why? Because white people are kind. White people are nice. Black guys are thugs. These are the stereotypes. If it happens to be a Hispanic gentleman who's a naturalized American citizen, well, it has to be right because he came here to work, to provide for his family. He's a hard worker. Because and a lot of times we're not honest and we don't like to admit that we are prejudiced. We prejudge people based on that. I have never heard anyone say to a white friend of mine, you're very articulate. But I have heard that many times. Oh, you're so articulate. And I always get offended by it. I may not say anything, but I always get offended by it. Because to me, the unspoken is I'm articulate for a black dude. That's the way I take that, because I've never heard any other demographic, young Mexican or young white guy referred to that way. I have never heard them referred to as articulate. So for me, the unspoken is always for a black dude. And I say that to illustrate this point. We have prejudices and we have racism in this country. It may not be as overt as lynching a person, or it may not be as extreme as having a sign up that says whites only and colors only, but It's there. And these are the concerns that Senator Flowers has. Because as a black woman who lives in a city like Pine Bluff has been deemed the murder capital of this country many times, along with the city of Little Rock. So we're going to create a law that is potentially going to have negative effects for regular, everyday, law-abiding citizens. Because let's just face it, I'm a young black guy who has a lot of tattoos, and I wear urban clothes. So as someone looking at me would think thug automatically. That's what happens when you're a young black dude, especially if you have dreads or braids or any other symbol that you use to express your culture. It's viewed as thug. If, for example, I have been dressed in a suit and tie before, holding the door for two middle-aged white women, and they were apprehensive about going through the door. And this is a young black guy with a suit and tie on. So what type of reception do you think I get when I have my t-shirt, my ball cap, and my tennis shoes on? Fear. They don't know me from a can of paint. But when you look at society, society views black men as criminals, as thugs. And if we already have that view, and I will divulge personal information, if I see 3 young black guys walking up my street, it gives me pause. And I've told my wife about that. I said, I have to really stop that. But that is what the media shows me. The media shows me young black kids on social media fighting. The media shows me young black kids in the media committing heinous crimes. But when I look at it statistically, I see the numbers all the way across the spectrum are not that different when it comes to young black kids, young white kids, young Hispanic kids, young Asian kids. The numbers aren't that different. But what do I see? I see young black kids. So if I'm a young black man, I see a group of young black kids walking up the street and I'm getting out of my car and I lock the door and say a silent prayer. What do you think a young white woman thinks? A young white man or a Hispanic person? They pretty much think the same thing because this is how a lot of African Americans have been depicted in the media, also in cinema. I mean, film is the worst. With the exception of Black Panther, a lot of predominantly black movies are what we'll call from the hood genre. All of the stereotypes are played out in these movies and in these sitcoms and these reality TV shows, and it's very disgusting and disheartening because that plays into the mindset that normal citizens have when it comes to dealing with people of color. This is the problem that I have with the Stand Your Ground law, because I think that as a person of color, I would be at a disadvantage if they were to pass the Stand Your Ground law, because that means any situation that I'm in, I'm automatically the aggressor. I've heard it said in the media, young black men appear to be older than they actually are. That was the rationalization behind little 11-year-old Tamir Rice being shot in the back by an officer while he had a toy gun. Mind you, we were in a state with open carry laws. So whether it was a toy gun or not, there was no reason to act with lethal force because you could have a gun. Did he point it at the cop? I think that's very difficult to prove when the kid was shot in the back. But We were able to accept that because his reasoning was, I didn't know he was 11. I thought he was much older. Because that's how we are viewed. And I'll tell you, that's so wrong. And I will say that I'm the exception because I don't have a beard. I don't have facial hair. I will say that I'm the exception. I'm 34 and most people don't believe that. But it's true. But when I look at my little brother who was 16 and had a full beard, then I'm like, that sometimes, could play a little part in it. My little brother, he was big, muscular, beard, and at 16, he did appear to be a grown man. But he's still a citizen in the United States of America, and he should be, extra emphasis on the word should be protected under the United States Constitution. But unfortunately, we have seen time and time again where young black men's constitutional rights, I say so-called constitutional rights, have been violated. And the violator of these constitutional rights has always been walked through the system. And I use that term meaning they hold his hand, everything goes the way it's supposed to, and he gets off scot-free. Let's look in Florida with what's the young man's name in Florida? Trayvon Martin. George Zimmerman had no right to do what he did. But he got off. He was being a vigilante. That was vigilantism at its finest, which is discouraged and, to my knowledge, illegal in this country. But he's touring around the country signing packages of Skittles. Let that sink in for a second. We remember Trayvon Martin had on the black hoodie and he had a pack of Skittles on him. And when George Zimmerman shot and killed him, he had a cell phone and he had a pack of Skittles. And George Zimmerman is going around this country signing packages of Skittles for his supporters. That makes me question not only him and his integrity, but the integrity and character of the people who want that signed pack of Skittles. Because never once were we able to find where Trayvon had committed a crime. Evidence was never produced to lend itself to Trayvon doing anything other than being a kid outside talking to a girl. Regardless to what, he was a kid in the United States of America. He was supposed to be protected by the laws that were drafted from the United States Constitution. In my opinion, the United States of America, the state of Florida, failed that young man. He was murdered. And the Stand Your Ground law will give license to people who have particular views to push their personal agenda in society in the form of murder, under the guise of the law. My name's Arshawn Wade. It's hard, but it's fair.